Street 87, and 87 is the number that I would pay in millions of pounds to be able to talk to Sam Morgan every day. But luckily enough, for free, he's joined me and you guys today. Mr. Sam Morgan, how are you?
Mate, great. Second time lucky. We've been probably chatting for 15 minutes without you hitting records. That was a really good start to the show.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, day 87. Day 87, and I'm having a great time. Can I just say big love to everyone on the Honest Talking About podcast, who you guys are now in the million club. We've hit 1 million downloads, which I'm chuffed with. Thank you to everyone. Yeah, that's cool, right? I'm pretty hyped about that. And please stay hydrated. And thank you to everyone on the Honest Talking About Patreon, and to all those guys that joined me live, like Darren, Will, Diadrin, MJ Pegasus, OJ. I just want to say thank you for joining us live. Sam is here. Sam, how have you been since we last spoke to you?
It's been a turbulent time, mate. There's been a lot going on. So actually managed to get out and play some Warhammer last weekend on the table, which was plenty of fun and certainly overdue.
No way, did you go to the Hohen's house?
No, I went there a couple of weeks ago, but they relegated me to third wheel, so I wasn't actually allowed to play. I was only allowed to watch. Yeah, I know. It's awful. On the weekend we went out. There's a new store that's opened up near here, so we went and checked that out, and got a couple of games in.
Is it good? It's a new gaming store?
Yeah, so there's a tiny little suburb out here called Ringwood, and it's sort of like the end of civilization and the start of boganization. So it's sort of where the two worlds meet each other, and they've actually got like the
I was just picturing the school dances now. I'm picturing a bunch of really urbanite children, and then a bunch of bogan kids at different sides of the school hall when they're doing the school dance. Okay, yeah, good, I got it.
Chewing straw, whatever else bogans do. And they've got 3 stores there now. So they've got a Warhammer store. They've got a store called House of War, which is like the biggest gaming space in the Southern Hemisphere. And then randomly, this third store just thought, oh well, I'll have a crack at that already oversaturated market. So we went and checked it out, and it was a really great space.
Oh, awesome! I desperately want there to be something new around Nottingham, other than just Warhammer World. As much as Warhammer World is great, it's also not great because it doesn't have all of the game systems in it, right? Which is a problem. But it doesn't matter at the minute because none of us can go outside, so it's fine. Although apparently the pubs are open in 2 days or something. I'm very confused.
Oh wow!
It's like no one go out. So currently you can't meet anyone unless you go outside, and you can meet 6 people maybe. But in a couple of days, all the pubs are open. And Wetherspoons, do you know what Wetherspoons is?
I think Wetherspoons is a restaurant like TGI's, like Thank God It's Fridays.
It's basically like a chain pub, but it's the chain pub. They've got so much buying power that the beer is as cheap as possible, and it's open from 9 a.m. till the mid, and they just buy. They go into every village in town. They're like Wetherspoons, new Wetherspoons everywhere, and it's super cheap. And you can do really funny things. Like they've got an app, so you can go into it and put onto it and be like, "Hey, I'm at Wetherspoons. Someone send me drinks to my table," and people send you peas and all sorts of things off the menu. Because they also have a menu that's like a mile wide. Name anything, and it's on the menu. And it's a great place. With the exception of the person that runs it is a monster. But apparently they're opening up in a couple of weeks, which is just like a minefield. A minefield. England's a bit of a weird one. I don't know where we're at. I'm really happy for you guys. Really happy for all the guys in New Zealand and everyone in Europe. You guys are killing it. Or not, which is great.
No, the opposite.
Yeah, the opposite.
We're on gatherings of 20, and 20 is just such a weird number for me because the way that maths works is if you're with 20 people and those 20 people then go off and they're with another 20 people and those 20 people go off and they're with another 20 people, you may as well not have restrictions. It's really hard for me to get my head around. But by the end of the month, I think we're back to 100, and that would include things like tournaments. So
wow,
very much looking forward to that. And I think later this year, there's a little period there where up in Bendigo they're running a 2-day tournament. So the guys at Measure Gaming, and then like a week later, a week before, Coach is running a 2-day tournament in Sydney, and then a couple of weeks after that, there's a 2-day down here out in Ringwood that my club's running as well. So we're going to have this period where it really kicks off again, which I'm very much looking forward to. Health permitting, so long as everyone's doing okay and it's not causing chaos, that's going to be really awesome.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's fantastic. I'm really happy for you guys. I really, really am. Like, especially just the concept of events getting like registered and back on the table. That's a big deal. Just for seeing your mates.
Oh,
That's
mate,
wonderful.
100%. We're doing a 1-day down in Geelong this weekend, which is a regional, like a regional city here, like a harbour town. I don't know what the equivalent would be. They used to build like heaps of cars and shit out there, but all the manufacturing's gone offshore. We're not going to talk politics or capitalism, but all the manufacturing's gone offshore. And
I will say one thing: non-politics, but like structural industrialization, which I think is quite interesting. I'm of the opinion that post-industrial cities are going to be the most cool and fun thing that ever to exist. I don't know if anyone's watched there's a pretty low quality but incredibly interesting documentary on YouTube you can watch about Detroit, which if you know anything about Detroit, it was a huge car manufacturing hub and effectively it moved all of its industry out of it. Yep. Yeah. But it had a huge population swell, and then it had a massive population decline. Like in 10 years, they lost like something wild, like 2 million people of its population left. Like, and so post-industrial cities have this kind of like romantic fascination for me. That like I get that they're awful places. Because they're so poor, but also they're kind of like I love the idea of mega structures that are abandoned and taken over by kids doing graffiti. Maybe that's my 80s upbringing. That's what that's doing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
sorry. It's going to be very interesting, and it's going to be upon us sooner than we think. So that's something for us all to look forward to. That's actually the case in Victoria as well. So we've got 2 regional cities, Ballarat and Bendigo, and they were both founded during the gold rush. So they had this massive influx of wealth and capital expenditure and this massive influx in population. And then basically what happens is you plumb to a certain depth, and the cost of mining the gold becomes, less enticing. So people stop mining and then they move away. So we've got these 2 beautiful historic cities that are now just overrun with ferals. So that's what we've got to look forward to everywhere.
That sounds amazing. That must be a great tourist destination, or not? I'm not sure.
We spent a heap of time in Ballarat when I was growing up. It's an absolutely beautiful place.
Oh, nice. Honestly, Australia's a wicked place. Okay.
Yeah.
So how have you been, other than the world, and big love to everyone who is coping through this right now. If you need someone to talk to, always just reach out to someone. But other than that, like how are you finding wargaming? You not got your head in the game at the minute? You got it out? What are you doing?
Well, I took a bit of a breather, just because nothing was happening. No releases were coming out. We weren't able to play games. I opted not to jump on TTS. I was watching games because my club's got a Discord and people were playing in there, and I'd jump in there or I'd jump on and I watch some of the games that you cast, and that was enough to scratch the itch. But I sort of took a back seat. But in the last couple of weeks, given that we're allowed to get out and about again, I've got right back into it. So building a Necromancer, what do you call them? A crew?
Gang?
An army,
I think they're gangs, aren't they?
A gang, yeah, a gang. They're definitely gangs. Building a Necromancer gang for a campaign we're doing, so that's heaps of fun.
Have you got a
and
theme?
I've gone Cawdor. And they're like the old Bretonians, so I'm really loving that. But the models have like quite literally like 50 or 60 pieces. And they're all tiny little fiddly pieces. It's really strange because the sculpts in AOS, they're dumbing them down, they're making them simpler and simpler, and you can just sort of whack stuff together. But this Necromancer stuff is really high end in terms of how difficult it is to build.
Yeah, I remember building a Necromancer gang, and the faces were individual on the head.
Yep, yeah.
And I was like, this is not okay.
Too much. Too much.
This is too far. Do you have a backstory for your Cawdor gang, or are you just gonna like go with their kind of generic gang backstory?
So my Cawdor gang, I'm basing off Macbeth, just a little play by a British playwright, because the guy becomes the Thane of Cawdor when there's a bit of treason. in the court or whatever. So I'm just building different characters based off the play Macbeth. So that's fun for me and no one else.
Wow, look at you! You are bringing all of the talent.
So I'm just you just shot Banquo, and my opponents are like, okay, cool.
Whatever. I've got 3 witches. What are you going to do now? Yeah. Coots says that is so narrative. FYI, big narrative there. Good.
Coots is one of the Geelong lads. Shout out to Coots.
Oh, big shout out to Coots. Have I met Coots? I must have met Coots. I think I might have. Jared Coots, that one.
Yeah, Jared Coots. That's the one.
Yeah. I know that guy. Okay, sweet. Have you keeping your eye on the Age of Sigmar stuff that you might have seen, or just anything really? Has there been any kind of trends, or is there anything you've gone, oh, that's quite interesting? Like, how do you feel about? I think one of the things we talked about was potentially like the current meta, and also what the meta might be like when it gets back to gaming. Have you had any thoughts about what that might look like when you get back to gaming?
I'm a bit worried, mate, because there's that saying, the night is darkest right before the dawn. I feel like we're very close to a reset, and what we've seen over the past 12 months in terms of the Zench drop, Seraphon, I think under the radar, Wrath of the Everchosen. But we've seen some books drop that really have a spike in the power level, and they also take the game in a different trajectory. Wrath of the Everchosen does something which when people get to play, the 50 horrors that you've rolled the 9s for, and then the 20 horrors that you've gotten for free from your Gaunt Summoners, when that wins a tournament with the person maybe not even killing very many of their opponents' victory points over the course of the weekend, that might come as a bit of a rude shock to people. The Knights of the Empty Throne, there's some stuff you can do there with Slaves to Darkness, with 1-drops with 6 Varangard that have all of the buffs in the world, that are pretty nasty as well. So I'm interested to see the way people play around with that book. And then the Seraphon stuff is obnoxious. The Seraphon stuff is a misstep, and that's really disappointing, because I also now feel like they've missed their opportunity to resolve it. So typically what would have happened is that book would have dropped, I don't know, did it drop in March or something like that, do you reckon?
I think it was
Feb, March.
March. Like, was it even in February?
February, I reckon, and it should have been picked up by the GHB. But with everything that's happened, there hasn't been any events for Salamanders and Croak to run rampant. So I think they're going to have a Daughters of Cain like run where they don't actually get corrected in the first revision cycle, and that's a bit of a worry. So what I'm saying is Zench is a problem, Seraphon is a problem. And I think some builds within Wrath of the Everchosen, but not the book in general. So some builds within the book are a problem. So the question is, if you want to be competitive, what can you do to counter those? And I think it's like go for it, man.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, and I agree with all of your review, and I agree with that. And having pushed around both Legion of the Chaos Ascendant and I'm pushing around a bit of Knights of the Empty Throne at the minute. But for me, it's their Marauders. Their Marauders are just the one.
Oh, mate, yeah.
They're unreal. But I'm with you. I think that when you actually talk about Seraphon, you go, right, I'll stop the magic. You're like, well, that's basically impossible. Okay, cool. I'll put anti-magic in. It's like, well, the Salamanders are not magic. They're just rolled into hit and wound. And you're like, they have all the answers. So no, I agree with you. I think we might see, especially at tournaments, and especially with the lockdown having been in effect, I think we'll see some very competent Seraphon players, and with produced armies, right? They'll have made all their armies. People have been twiddling their thumbs. There hasn't been an AOS release in ages now, like 3 months. So, which I know, based on it, back in the old day, that wouldn't be particularly long, but nowadays...
no, that's a couple of books. In last year's release cycle, that's maybe 2.5 books. And it's also the GHB, which we would be getting some snippets of typically this time of year. So, I mean, I like, notwithstanding all of that, I'm not disheartened. I still feel like you can go away and you can pinch a 5-0 with some off-meta stuff. And it feels to me very much like we're right at the end of an edition. So I'm hoping that there's some system fixes that sort of address some of this stuff.
What stuff would you like to see?
It's really weird. Like, I think that they do need to. They do need to look. I think a really big thing for me is around drops and deployment. So at the moment, you get this benefit. So the reason I think Slaves to Darkness is strong is because you can take battalions that include Marauders, whether that's Fatesworn Warband or whether that's the Plague Touched or whether that's the Plague Round, whatever it might be. You can get your characters and Marauders in a low drop. So what's the list I've been writing? A one drop with everything included, or two dropping with Balakor. And then I get the choice of going second, and it's just like that's actually doubling down on something that's already good. So I think it'd be good to see them address the way that the first turn is determined. Even if the first turn was a roll-off like all the other turns, and the player who's down first, wins the tie or something, I'd like them to see them do something about that. Because, again, like a build like a change host, always going second is bullshit. Like that's it's flagrantly wrong. That you can run a change host and choose to go second, because you already have such a massive advantage in terms of the things that the battalion does, and the extra artifacts and all that sort of stuff. So I'd like them to look at the mechanics around who goes first. I think that would go a long way, and I'd like them to look, I think, probably like at the artifacts and those sort of things. I think probably moving away from the realms, like not that it's a problem per se, but just in terms of general changes. I don't know. I think there's some probably structural stuff that's wrong with the game, that they probably want to look at rule changes for to address. Like I think introducing some sort of rule of one mechanics is probably a good idea at this point, because a lot of the stuff that's really egregious is when you're stacking abilities or stacking buffs, like being able to stack a command ability, for example. I pointed one out to you. There's a way in Nurgle that you can get a disgustingly resilient that's a 1+.
Yep.
And because it's not one of the things called out in the book, it's impossible for you to fail. So, like, I know you're only putting it on plague drones, but you can make unkillable plague drones that are on big bases that can zone out objectives. Like, that sort of stuff needs to be
And most importantly, they're unkillable. Like
unkillable, like properly unkillable, not just in yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. I agree with you. I think command ability stacking has always been an issue. I also think, and I remember one of the early Bobos, they actually had just roll off. So for Age of Sigmar 2, when Bobo rolled around, they actually had roll off to see who goes first, which I thought was the right decision. And I still think that's the right decision to this day, because you need to unreliably deploy. You need to be like unsure. You need to be, there's risk versus reward. Do you deploy super aggressive? Maybe. Or do you not? Maybe. So like, I also agree with that sentiment. And I think I would like to just see some clarity on a lot of the fringe rules, like garrisoning. I think I'd like to see some big clarity there. Like, what do you mean by all of the different things that you're trying to say? I think that would be nice. But so I also don't want it to be messed around with too much, because it's not that I don't like some new stuff, but Age of Sigmar 2 introduced some pretty massive changes, endless spells and summoning and command point stacking. That's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of stuff, which we're still dealing with to this day. Still to this day, like, those Legions and Nagash players are still like, do you know what, I might just bring back 60 Grimgas and have a great time at a tournament. Like, that's still a thing. So, yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm with you. Are there any... Oh, go on.
Some sort of overarching summoning resource is a good idea, because, like I said, like summoning pink horrors for the same cost as summoning furies is wild. Like, that's just crazy. That they're both for free, but one of them is just so much different, as the impact it has on the game is so much different. I'm playing a bit of Mixed Death at the moment, and one of the artifacts enables me to summon, and depending on the build, you can do some tricksy stuff with that. So there's this Nighthaunt unit, I think they're called Chain Ghasts, and they've got shooting attack, and they've got this ranged close combat attack where they're able to attack everyone within 2 inches, and they also give rerolls to some of the Nighthaunt units. They're like a really good versatile unit.
Yeah.
And just being able to summon them for free actually like really impacts games significantly. And then in other games, depending on what I need, I could summon Mymore and Banshees for free, and summoning those up and then giving them +2 attacks through 2 different command abilities and fight twice from a Necromancer. Their Ren 2 damage D3, all of a sudden a unit that's not even on the board when my opponent's having their turn can have a really, really, really significant in-game impact.
Yep.
And then if I lose them, I always just feel like, oh, they were free. Do you know what I mean? Like anything they do is an added bonus.
Yeah, I didn't have to do much to achieve this. Yeah, I think that all the time.
I do nothing. I do nothing. Like,
yeah. Yeah, like, that's how I'm feeling about when I play Legion of the Chaos Ascendant the other week. I thought the most obnoxious way to play that obviously would be to just put pink horrors on the board and then have the 5-up around the pink horrors as a way of affecting them. But I didn't do that because I thought everyone on the stream would literally just like gouge their eyes out and be bored to sweet tears. But yeah, the summoning is a thing. That's definitely true. The other thing that just Owen's been brought up, which I feel like is a really solid point, is terrain needs some proper clarity.
100%. Yeah.
I think some sweet terrain, which we'll come back to the terrain in a minute. Well, I guess what I'd like to ask you about, what are your thoughts on the board size change that we're seeing in 40k? Because that's definitely going to be what we see, obviously, in Age of Sigmar when we get the new edition. So, like, what are your thoughts on that? You got any?
Yeah. So my personal selfish thoughts are, as a person who lives in an apartment, it's a significant enough change that it would impact me having a board here. So I don't have a board at home at the moment. I've got a mat at Nick's house. I've got 2 tables worth of terrain at Nick's house, but I don't have a big enough space here to sort of play games. So with it being marginally smaller, and I know it's only 1 foot and 4 inches and whatever it is, that actually does make a big difference. And then my economic thoughts on it is that it's really consistent with Games Workshop's approach. So for people that don't know, Games Workshop in their annual report last year, they set out a mission statement and they said, they wanted to make these amazing universes of unique miniatures. And one of the things they called out in terms of their corporate risks is managing IP. So doing things like this, where they make a bespoke table size, it might seem minor, but what it does is it enables them to corner the market, so that they'll have products ready, I'm sure, that they can punch out immediately. And what it does as well is it undercuts small retailers. So anyone that's out there like Fat Matt making 6x4s, I feel like a lot of people will bin their 6x4s because they'll play on the size of the table that the big tournaments run. So like it legitimately, I know it seems small, but it legitimately is a really sinister corporate move. And it's one that their investors will be rapt about. But it's interesting the way that companies work on scale. And that's probably not something that your local store manager is considering, but it's certainly something that head office is considering.
Yeah, I'd like to mirror those sentiments as well. I think it's very much a corporate decision over any in-game effect that it has. But one of the things that we've also seen in the 40k changes is we've seen a significant points increase for hordes and also abilities that are going to affect hordes really well. So, like, not only have we seen points increase for horde units, we've seen units that are going to be good versus anti-horde. So I feel like we're also going to move to a less models on the board initiative as well. So smaller board, less models on the board. Yeah. So the smaller board, I'm like, do you know what? Obviously, whatever. I can kind of just glaze over that.
It's like,
But for Age of Sigmar and for smaller armies, model-wise, that's a really interesting question. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, firstly, the smaller board makes Croak better, because if he's got an Astrolith bearer, if he's got a bearer and then he's got something that he can channel through, he's going to be able to get most of the table. So that's good.
That saves time. That saves time, right?
I guess smaller armies makes Warhammer more accessible, and being accessible to more people is important. But I sort of like the fact that it is more of a game of scale than like Necromunda or Mordheim or Blood Bowl. There's enough offerings out there, even in the Age of Sigmar universe, like Warcry. What's the other one? Shadespire. There's a heap of stuff already that's small scale. And yeah, I personally don't really get the appeal of like a medium-sized game. I like that my armies sometimes have 100 models. Like I played a mixed dwarfs army on the weekend, and I had 190 wounds and like over 100 dwarfs, and I liked moving them around.
It feels it feels like a war game, right? I know that's a wanky thing to say, but I do want to play war.
I was playing against that chaos build where they do mortal wounds on the charge. So he had like 50 Marauder horsemen, and I had like over 100 dwarfs, and it felt really like cinematic. And it even though we were playing on what's called it like the 40k urban war, like do you know there was some old cities expansion for 40k, and we were playing on a table specifically built for that, which was all very futuristic, but it still felt cool.
Yeah, I think I think that change will be significant change, obviously, to a lot of people as well. Like me having 120 Marauders, not that I do have, but I definitely would like to have. I now say to myself, well, actually, I get them made in the next. I mean, that's quite an investment of time, painting up 120 Marauders, let's say. And I think, well, if that's going to get reduced down really quickly soon, I probably won't start down that line. Do you know what I mean? Like, I won't start painting horde units, and I might not even start painting horde armies. I might go down a different route. So I mean, obviously things like I'm pretty set that loads of grots for ogre more tribes are decent, but I'm not going to now go and invest in that. Now it probably would have been a silly idea anyway, but it's still a thing. So I think people are going to have to take into consideration, and my advice for people is to think over the next year, if you're going to go and commit to doing 120 of the same unit, that probably that's going to be not invalidated but more difficult. I think it will be really telling when we start seeing the Daughters of Cain book, and we see some of those other books come out, and we see units that traditionally were like you could take 90 or so of those units, and we'll see if they get good enough that you would take less and their points go up as well. I think that'll be a good indication, but I'm not sure.
Was the dude you interviewed the other day, and it was a really great conversation. Jim from Canada, that was his whole thing, leaning into the plague bearers, and it's just like, why wouldn't you do that when they're as broke as they were at the time? I think like what would be really nice is if each of the games that they produced had a distinct appeal to them. So maybe 40k is the game of urban skirmish. You know what I mean? There's some tanks, there's some walkers, maybe there's some infantry, there's some heavy weapons, and that's your army. And maybe Age of Sigmar is the game of fantasy battles, and it's a game of scale. Like that actually, to me, I think like there's this real appeal to homogenizing the systems and making them as familiar as you can to player bases from the other system, because you want to get this cross-contamination thing happening. Yeah. But equally, I think by having them as distinct games, then they've got unique appeals. Do you know, and you can actually get people that are fully, like I'm fully immersed in Age of Sigmar, right? I don't have capacity to pick up 40k, even if it is really similar to Age of Sigmar. So I'd really like it if Age of Sigmar kept its own flavor and stayed on 6x4s and had lots of models. But I think the writing's on the wall that they're both probably going to move to being medium-sized games.
Yep. Yep, but a good point, which someone in the chat made earlier, is that it does mean that new players are less intimidated to jump in. You know, they can be like, I like Army X, and I only need 80 models, not 100 models. It's not much of a difference, and maybe it's not actually enough of a difference that it's worth doing. But anyway, so one of the other things about new GHB and the future, I think, is an exciting, interesting thing, is the terrain. So they've said, and they're going to talk about it today, literally today. So we're a day early for this chat. That they're gonna drastically redesign terrain, and they're going to draw maps, and they're going to have preset, and it's all going to be keyworded and stuff like that. Which brings me to the conversation about the Age of Sigmar terrain, which has always been a bit like it's not really there. Like it is a thing, but it's not really a thing. And how you feel about 3D spaces. So this is one of the things that happened yesterday. Or not yesterday, a couple of days ago, is units that can fly and teleport, that teleport on top of buildings, on the side of buildings, on the edge of a leaf. What are your thoughts on that?
So it's a game of abstraction, right? And it's really hard. It's really hard to draw a line where the abstraction ends. But like when I'm playing, I dislike that 40 Marauders teleport onto the side of a wizard's tower, and not a single model is physically on the table. But both players need to be conscious of like the volume that they're taking up, the space that they're taking up, and then all of a sudden your models are piling in. It's like, well, where the fuck are they? And do you know what I mean? Like I really don't like that. And I think I heard Nathan saying on the show, it's just dumb. And I sort of like, I'm Camp Nathan on this one. Just like it really needs to just be a common sense approach, surely.
Well, interestingly,
it doesn't make for good podcasting if we're just an echo chamber, but it's just like it's one that's so easy to fix. Can your model physically sit there? Yes. All right, it can go there. Otherwise, no. Like,
yeah, I think, but I think there's a really simple and elegant fix. Is my point, and I'd be interested, like, especially with some of the events that you've got coming up in the future, and especially with things like some very obvious candidates for those teleports are some of those recent books that you talked about. Slaves to Darkness, teleport. Tzeentch, teleport. Seraphon, teleport. They've all got the ability to do so. And I wonder if TOs are going to step up and be like, this needs to be a conversation that we have before the events go. Because we've had a long break now. Time to quantify and have an analysis and have a conversation amongst ourselves. We're not jumping between. You know, I wonder if some of these events that we might see in Australia and other places jumping forward and being like, yeah, we've got a pretty common approach to this. We're going to just crack it out. I would like to see it, personally, but I don't know if we're going to. I think is the real point. I'd love to know what the Twitch chat thinks.
If you think about like the salamanders, their footprint is really small, and by being able to put those 20 mil skinks quite literally wherever you want, to the extent that you say, oh, like a tiny bit of this base is touching this terrain and it's going vertically, you can get them on a 3-up save, which is a nonsense. You can get them on a 3-up save in a tiny little bit of cover, which is just that's not in anyone's best interest, I don't think.
I don't think so either. Okay, so we'll move on from that. We'll talk about the positives. So I know you're doing Necromancer, but is there? What are you planning to take to events, or is it we're going to keep this low key? Like that's kind of.
There's no secrets. I'm very pro transparency. So my club, Model Citizens, we've had a bit of an infestation. We've had a bit of a vermintide.
Oh no!
So. It starts with one and then it spreads exponentially. So a lot of us are currently putting together Skaven armies, and those of us who aren't putting together Skaven armies are being peer pressured, both tacitly and sort of actively. So there's a lot of coercion happening to get everyone on the Skaven for CanCon next year. And in the first instance, I thought, we'll do different clans, but if we get enough people doing it, we'll just do whatever we want. And I'm tackling Clan Eshin. So I signed up to the Honest Wargamer website today.
Oh, nice! First time.
if you want my feedback for free, it was really cool. I jumped on and looked at some of the rundowns, and they're really good. And I looked at some of the most viewed lists, and that was a really cool feature as well. So I posted up the Skaven that I'm planning to run at CanCon there. I haven't done the write up yet, but I'll talk to some of that now if you want, and then I can do some further commentary on the site, and I'll probably provide some updates as I play practice games and change the list around. I landed on Eshin independently, so I was looking through and I thought, yep, that's cool. They're the ones I want to play. And then I reached out to Dan Brewer a couple of months ago and I said, hey, this is what I'm thinking. And he was like, yeah, I'm doing the same thing. It's like, fuck, because he's gonna get his done before me and do really well before I've even played it.
Oh no, that's the worst.
That's right. And there's no appeal. And then I was chatting to Luke Morton, and he was I think Luke chops and changes, but he was in a similar headspace to me in terms of the unit selections as well. So I think there's probably a list there that a few people have stumbled. No one's had an opportunity to test it in real life yet.
Okay, all right. Well, what's in the list now? Now I'm interested. Sneaky Ninja Rats is definitely very interesting.
So it's headed up by a Vermin Lord, Warpnor, who's the Forge World Vermin Lord. So the way that the Skaven book works is if you take a Master Clan General and then the rest of your army is locked to one of the clans. It unlocks some different battle line for you. So by taking the Warpnor and then everything else is Clanish and the army is Clanish. This guy is the absolute best. He's 260 points, and he is a significantly better fighter than the Aspect of the Storm, and he's a significantly better caster than the Aspect of the Sea. So he's just.
But both of those are definitely going to go down 10 points in the next GHB though. So
yeah. they'll go down 15 points now and then 5 at Christmas. So 20 in total, which is fabulous. So what he does is he's got this awesome weapon that is 3s and 3s, but it's then Ren 2 damage 5. Before he starts to degrade. So damage 5 is outrageous. Yep. So I've taken the artifact Gaia Strike on him. And because he's my general, he's got a trait called Malevolent, which lets him reroll once to wound. So typically what he'd be doing is hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, rerolling once for both. And then he would have Ren 2 damage 5. So the math on that is typically you should be doing that full 20 damage. And if you pick your fights with him, he can be a real thorn in the side. And then he's got 2 spells because he's a Vermin Lord. He's got a 5-up damage prevention roll because he's a Vermin Lord. And then because he's Master Clan, every time he uses a command ability on a 5+, you get it back. So he's got an inbuilt Aether Quartz Brooch, which is super important because you want all of your units rerolling once to hit as often as possible. And we'll get to that later. So he's just really awesome. And his spell, you're allowed to choose a model. So that could be like a character, for instance, or a model in an enemy unit. And if you roll equal to or over their wounds, they're slain. So that's awesome because you can pick things out like the Pink Horus Standard Bearer. You can pick things out like the Mortek Guard Champion. There's a whole heap of models where the specific model provides a benefit to the unit. You can do things to break coherency. There's heaps of tricks you can do with that. And then he's paired with another Vermin Lord, who's the Vermin Lord Deceiver. And the Deceiver in the current meta, I think after the Warpnor, I think he's the second best Vermin Lord because he's -2 to hit from shooting natively. And he's got a 5++, so he's got that damage prevention roll. And his spell enables you to teleport models to 6 inches away. So you can teleport that Warpnor Vermin Lord away, and then he can cast his spells. I've got Geminids and Pendulum in the list as well. He can cast his spells, and if you teleport him to near a Norhole, you can actually then teleport back to your deployment zone and be super safe. So because of the sequencing of when the teleports happen. So there's some really cool stuff you can do. And the Eshin guy's really good at fighting as well. So he's got a really good combat profile. And he's got a couple of thrown weapons, and the thrown weapons matter because it all stacks up in this army. So those two really, they have to do a lot of the heavy lifting. It's like 600 points out of the army. They're really important that I play them right. Basically, if I misplay either of those units, the likelihood of winning drops right off. And then they're supported by 110 gutter runners and night runners.
Wow.
So there's 2 units of 20 gutter runners and 2 units of 5, and these guys can deploy off the board, but they have to come on the first turn. So typically what I'd look at doing is look for pockets for the 5s, and I'd probably deploy the 20s on the table. 20 is a really important number in Skaven because if you're at 20 or more models, you get +1 to hit. And that's really important for the gutter runners because they've got rending on that. So I think gutter runners are probably like the most underrated unit in Skaven. And it's funny, I've been talking about this with, like I said, Dan and Luke, and we're all just like, these guys are amazing. Why don't you see them in every Skaven list? So I'm trying to open up the War Scroll Builder, and of course it's doing what's it called, a system update or some bullshit.
Oh,
all right,
Wheel of Death. Wheel of Death.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Gutter runners, they got 2 shots, they hit on 4s, they wound on 5s. The important thing with the to wounds is that the command ability of the Deceiver is a massive bubble of reroll wounds. So you can get heaps and heaps of units inside that bubble and have everything reroll to wound.
What, reroll to wound? Like all to wound, not just
reroll
once?
to wound.
Wow.
All to wound.
Awesome.
Also, because it's a Skaven ability, I don't know if you know about this, but the Skaven abilities are worded in such a way that the timing, I personally don't do this because I play my buffs sequentially, but they're worded in such a way that you could actually roll your to wounds say, oh, a heap of them fail to wound, I'll use my command ability, like mid-sequence.
Oh, wow.
So that's something, if you really want to upset someone, that's something to do without telling them before the game
That's upset me, and I'm not even playing. Like,
yeah, like I said, I don't do that personally. You want to if you wanted to. Yeah.
That's wild. That's wild. Like, that's fun. And oh, hello, Sam. So he's just hung up on me. He's like, you can reroll mid sequence. That's it. I'm done. I'm out. Sam Morgan out. Yeah, mic drop. I'll give him a call back to see if he's okay. If anyone has any questions for Sam, though, please let me know or ask him in the chat, and I will ask him. It's important. It might have been my internet. Did my internet drop? Could have been me.
Yeah, you dropped out.
Was it me? Oh, dear.
Yeah, it was you. Mine was still going.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, everyone.
You're right, man.
This is my fault. But we're recording, so it'll be all good. I've got it sorted. You just started with you can reroll all to wound mid sequence, and my internet was so shocked by that it turned you off.
The gutter runners are really good. So you get 50 of them, 2 20s, 2 5s. As blocks of 20s, they're chucking out 40 attacks, hitting on 2s, wounding on 4s, re-rolling to wound. The Rend 1, they're just a really, really good unit. Their movement 7, everything in the army, the Night Runners and Gutter Runners can run and shoot. And then that gets us onto the Gutter Runners. So there's 6 units of 10 Gutter Runners. They've got a 12-inch range shooting attack that can run and shoot. But the important thing about them is before the game, after armies are set up, you can move this unit up to 2d6. So you've got 6 units with a pre-game move, which as a 3-drop means you can do some really great screening stuff, give away first turn, and at most lose 120 points in Night Runners, or potentially not lose anything. But like there's things you can do with them that they're really tricksy, and I really like that in any build. And then the other thing is that a lot of this sits in. So there's a Deathmaster, the Gutter Runners, Night Runner. They sit in this battalion called the Slinkerton. Is that how you say it? Yeah, Slinkerton. Slink Talon. That makes a lot more sense. In the Slink Talon. And on the turn that the Deathmaster pops out, everything in the army, all of those units, the Gutter Runners and Night Runners, get rerolls to hit in that combat phase. So if you time your strike right, that can be really significant, because basically what it means is all of your army is getting rerolls to hit and wound if you've set your bubbles up properly. So it's definitely like a high finesse army. I would say high degree of difficulty, but hopefully with practice I'll be able to get some good results with it. And there's one final trick in the army that's really, really cool. So the Vermin Lord Deceiver's got this artifact. And basically the way that it works is at the start of the combat phase, it's called the Cube of Mists. Start of the combat phase, you choose a unit within 6 of the Deceiver. So that's good because it means he can run up behind your lines that are fighting and get within 6 of something. That unit can't pile in that turn, and they're -1 to hit. So what you can do is you can set up, like say for instance, Hearthguard Berserkers have a 2-inch range. Mm-hmm. You could set up so that your Gutter Runners have charged in it and are set up in such a way that everything's sitting 2 inches and 1 millimeter away. And then you can shoot your Deathmaster out because he pops out of units. He could go base to base with a model. He could fight. It's then the Fire Slayers player's turn to fight, and none of their models can move. So they attack, but they don't pile in, and then you pile in with all of your stuff to kill them. It is really strong, and in combination with the Geminids, you can hit units, with a -2 to hit or a -1 attack and -1 to hit, and it's got like a lot of the way that this army works is that there's a lot of in-game like shenanigans, and this is one of them.
And a lot of control on the board space because of the movement, right?
Oh, mate, yeah. And you got 13 units, so that's really important from a design perspective. 13 units in a Skaven army, so it's 110 models that ostensibly are there to support 2 Vermin Lords.
That's even more narrative.
Yeah, exactly. And what it does is it's 164 shots, where it's 4s by 5s, but 6s to hit a double hits, and then typically you're re-rolling your 5s to wound. So what that means is it's not uncommon in a shooting phase for it to pump out 70 or 80 damage.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. And that
And
all
yeah,
that
go on.
shooting's run and shoot as well. All that shooting's run and shoot. So your movement 7, range 12 can run up to 6. A lot of those units move pre-game or deep strike. And because they're a 12-inch, like deep strikers with 12-inch shooting is awesome because you're 9 inches away, but your weapons have a 12-inch range.
Yes, yeah, of course, of course. And then yeah, and I mean, I know you didn't even gloss over it, but like run and shoot is so big. Like in the right
Yeah.
context and in the right situation, just being able to like that movement is so fast, especially when and shooting is devastating when you're able to do it over 2 turns. Because you're not allowing, especially with combat, if you're not, opponent's not allowed to just re-engage with you. There's always that. Combat's always a risk reward mechanic. Shooting is just
Hmm.
all benefit for the shooter. Like
But you can even mitigate that risk reward by always keeping your deceiver with the stuff you want fighting, because then it should even affect the way that the units that they charge, because they should be doing things where they're like, oh shit, I know I can't get within 6 of that deceiver because he's just going to stop me from piling in, and there'll be neg 1 to hit. Um, like there's a whole host of stuff you can do there. And the other thing I forgot to mention is that the Vermin Lord, the Warpnor Vermin Lord, is allowed to deep strike as well. So you could conceivably start the game with 4 units of gutter runners and the Vermin Lord off the board. And then even you're giving away first turn quite often with this sort of build because you want the double with that much shooting. Like a double with 320 shots is enough to get through quite a number of, like the stuff that it won't get through.